Snoop Dogg, also known as Snoop Doggy Dogg, appears to have some sort of jealousy towards Kendrick Lamar. In recent years, as Kendrick has continued to build up his already legendary hip hop career just with his music catalog alone, dropping classic on classic albums for over a decade. While Snoop over the years has been more known for being a celebrity star outside of his music catalog for the last 2 decades and for being the official sugar baby to Martha Stewart.
Who?
Even though Snoop Dogg is the first West Coast legend to pass the throne for King of the West to Kendrick Lamar back on stage in 2011, alongside fellow West Coast legends Corrupt and one of Kendrick Lamar's biggest haters in music outside of Drizzlecake, The Game, Snoop has made very questionable decisions throughout the last decade after passing the throne to Kendrick Lamar, where it seems that Snoop Dogg has never fully embraced Kendrick Lamar as a hip-hop artist ever since the moment they shared together 13 years ago at the Music Box Theater in LA. But the lack of close friendship and music collaborations between Snoop Dogg and Kendrick Lamar over the years is not my main reasons for why I feel that there is some jealousy from Snoop Dogg when it comes to Kendrick Lamar. Not Kendrick Lamar the person or the man that he represents for hip-hop, but more the impact and legacy that both artists are leaving in hip-hop. Now, before we go further with the video, let's discuss Snoop and Dr. Dre's recent Drink Champs interview, hosted by Nori and DJ EFN, where they both sit down with legendary Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg to promote Snoop's upcoming album, Missionary, executive produced by Dr. Dre. Snoop is also asked by Nori in the same interview what his thoughts are about Lil Wayne expressing his frustrations publicly about not being picked over Kendrick Lamar to headline the Super Bowl halftime show in New Orleans.
What we need to think about is that before Jay-Z got control of the Super Bowl, wasn't no niggas performing. So let's go back to the essence of the beginning of, you're a great artist, your time will come. I was never crying about it or mad about it. When Dr. Dre called me and asked me to get his back, I was there for him.
And even though it seems that Snoop Dogg did defend Kendrick Lamar after Snoop made the comments about Wayne, he's definitely not taking Kendrick Lamar's side in any battle, as he clearly stated right after that statement.
Since not like us, everybody.
Let me tell you what that record did do. It unified the West. I chose no sides because I have no individual cause with that. That's a grown man going against a grown man.
Yet he appreciates how Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us record unified the West Coast.
What it did do was unite the West and make everybody out here start looking at each other like how much love we got for each other.
Right.
It was a blood walk.
But the irony with this statement from Snoop Dogg, as a West Coast legend, got himself caught up, like Usher without the herpes, for not unifying the West Coast when Snoop Dogg was promoting Drizzle Pie's Trash Diss record, Tailor Made.
Me and Snoop Dogg have my fucking shirt off in the House of Blues. I just passed it to Snoop.
Y'all have a good night. And to all. What the fuck? What happened?
And even though Kendrick Lamar prayed it was the edibles, this would not be the first West Coast artist to be in this type of situation with Snoop Dogg, where it has everybody in hip-hop looking at Snoop Dogg sideways like E40 and Be Legit, when it comes to Snoop Dogg being loyal to his West Coast region and the hip-hop artists that are from that region. Issues with Tupac. Snoop himself was not helping unify the West Coast during the height of his own issues and beef between Death Row and Bad Boy Records back in the 90s, after Snoop Doggy Dogg played a huge part in igniting a coastal war between the West Coast and East Coast before Tupac ever joined Death Row, dating back to the 1995 Source Awards, where Snoop Dogg made it known on that stage that he had love for the East Coast, but did not hold back when he said he didn't give a fuck about what the East Coast thought about the West Coast hip-hop scene and the artists that come from the region, because you know where he at.
The East Coast don't love Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg and Death Row. Y'all don't love us. Y'all don't love us. Well, let it be known then. We know y'all East Coast. We know where we at. East Coast and out.
And let's keep it real, like Snoop Dogg's name of his own diss record aimed at Biggie with the unreleased 1996 track, Keep It Real, Dog.
I'm back on the block, but I ain't come with the same stuff. Nigga, don't say shit, cause I already said I be on the red eye. You're fat, you're black, you're whack, your style is toe up, plus you got one dead eye. Keep bouncing, bouncing.
Mind you, around the same time, Tupac is locked up, still awaiting a release from Suge Knight to become the new member of Death Row Records and really heighten up the battle between Death Row Records and Bad Boy Records. However, prior to Pac ever signing with Death Row Records, he had his own issues with his former friend, the Notorious B.I.G., but more specifically, co-founder of Bad Boy Records, P. Diddy, for having alleged involvement behind Pac's shooting at Quad Studios in 1994. having P. Diddy and record executive Andre Harrell alongside Biggie and Junior Mafia in the same building, communicating with the alleged hitmen and guys behind Pac's shooting, including Haitian Jack and Jimmy Henchman, on the same night that Tupac was shot at Quad Studios, which would be enough to make any person, especially Tupac, angry and feeling resentment for Bad Boy Records. So on top of the personal issues that Pac had with Bad Boy Records, he also decided to show loyalty to not only Suge Knight, but his new record label mate, Snoop Dogg, by inheriting his beef with Biggie before Pac ever joined Death Row Records, like showing support for Snoop Dogg after the deadly situation that happened with the Dog Pound while they were filming their New York, New York music video in New York back in December of 1995. Pac was not involved nor present for this situation where it involved issues between Bad Boy and Death Row Records, more specifically the Notorious B.I.G. and Snoop Dogg. With Snoop and the Dog Pound calling up Hot 97 radio station, letting everybody know in the East Coast to show up and show love to some West Coast people, well, that didn't go well because allegedly the Notorious B.I.G. called up Hot 97 minutes after Snoop Dogg called up the radio station where Biggie is asking all of Brooklyn to stand up.
The Hot 97 incident, when Biggie got on the radio, Snoop and Dog Pound was shooting a music video in New York, and Snoop and Dog Pound trailer ended up getting shot up.
He got on the radio. He was asking Brooklyn how they was going to let that happen. How you going to let them come disrespect, New York like that and everything? And then their van got shot up.
And let the Dog Pound know that their presence is felt in New York, but it may not be wanted or accepted, which caused Snoop Dogg and the Dog Pound to re-edit that same iconic music video where Snoop and the Dog Pound are now crushing over the buildings in New York. But again, that type of energy of we don't give a fuck, we ride till dawn did not start with Tupac. It definitely started with Snoop Dogg, the Dog Pound, or Biggie. Somebody started it, but it wasn't Tupac. But I bring up the Tupac and Snoop Dogg situation to remind us that Snoop Dogg may have the same type of resentment for Kendrick Lamar. Here are more reasons why Snoop Dogg, in my humble opinion, is jealous towards Kendrick Lamar when it comes to comparing one another as rappers in the hip-hop genre. Kendrick's music relationship with Dr. Dre. Even though Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg collaborated on one of the biggest hip-hop albums of all time with Snoop's debut project, Doggy Style, in 1993, the two collaborators never really had a close music relationship outside of Dr. Dre executive producing this album for Snoop. Before Doggy Style, Snoop Dogg did make appearances for Dr. Dre, including his Death Row debut single, Deep Cover 187, released in 1992.
Tonight's the night I get in some shit. Yeah, and you don't stop.
Cause it's 187 on an undercover car.
Followed up with the iconic Chronic album from Dr. Dre, including the smash hit Nothing But a G Thing, featuring Dr. Dre's protege, Snoop Dogg.
Yeah, and that's realer than real deal, Holyfield. Small piece of some of that funky stuff. This and like that and like this and...
But after 1993, Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg never had the opportunity to work on a full project together, as Dr. Dre quickly left Death Row Records around 1996, right before Tupac's untimely passing in Las Vegas. There were tensions building with Suge Knight having gang ties with Death Row's A&R department, and clearly Dr. Dre was having none of that. Been there, done that, fuck that. And literally said, I'm leaving it all behind, including his ownership with Death Row Records, leaving behind his protege, Snoop Dogg, to fend for himself with his upcoming sophomore album, The Doggfather, released November 12, 1996, executive produced by Daz Dillinger and DJ Pooh. But months after the release of The Doggfather, Dr. Dre himself revealed in a 1997 Spin magazine interview that he did not like Snoop Dogg's sophomore album, claiming to feel a groove the first listen, but overall being disappointed by the production sound and lack of new substance from Snoop Dogg on The Doggfather, as Dr. Dre stated in his own words by saying, quote, "Really nothing that was said on there that hasn't been said 50 times before." Even though Kendrick had already built himself a name with his album Section 80 before working with Dr. Dre was convinced enough to sign Kendrick Lamar and work with him after hearing Section 80 and decided to start helping Kendrick with his official debut studio album, Good Kid Mad City, in 2012. Then also helping Kendrick Lamar with his sophomore album with To Pimp a Butterfly. But as you can see, Dr. Dre is already giving Kendrick Lamar a lot more of a push with his first two albums, where Dr. Dre was only helping Snoop Dogg on his first album, but with Kendrick, Dre is working with him for the first 5, 6, 7 years. Big difference. I'm sure Snoop Dogg felt like, damn, Dre, it's taking you over 30 years to finally executive produce an album for me with Missionary This is not Kendrick Lamar's fault though. The biggest difference between Snoop Dogg with Kendrick Lamar, I'm sure Dr. Dre would say the same, is the work ethic and the ability to go in the studio and just focus in on being a creative when it comes to the effort and the ability to produce great songs, great hits, classic albums, which Kendrick Lamar has clearly done with his first 3-4 projects. It's clear that Dr. Dre would want to work with Kendrick Lamar more, in my humble opinion, but that still doesn't mean that Snoop Dogg wouldn't feel a way about the close relationship that Dre has with Kendrick, where essentially he's helped lift Kendrick up to the heights that he's at as a superstar, also defending Kendrick Lamar in the beef with Drizzle Cake by Dre going out there on stage with Kendrick at the Pop Out and Friends in Inglewood.
I'm gonna just need a moment of silence for this. I see dead people. Hey, mustard on a beat, how?
Comparisons with Kendrick Lamar to Tupac. I really believe Snoop Dogg wanted to have Tupac on Death Row Records while Tupac was locked up. However, I don't think Snoop ever thought that Tupac would come to Death Row Records and outdo the numbers that Snoop Dogg did with his debut album, Doggy Style. All the momentum goes to Tupac, the release of his album, All Eyes on Me. When you look at Snoop Dogg's discography compared to Tupac's, you could easily say that Tupac outdoes Snoop when it comes to classic albums, as Tupac has Tupacalypse Now, then you have All Eyes on Me, Machiavelli the Don Illuminati, 7 Day Theory, while Snoop Dogg is barely recognized for one classic album with Doggy Style. As a huge Snoop Dogg fan, I don't think that's the case. Snoop Dogg has more classics than just the one album on Death Row Records. When he left Death Row, he had a whole resurgence with No Limit and dropped 3 albums. That's Snoop's best era. No Limit Top Dog, his best album. You gotta go listen to it. But again, none of those albums are considered to be classics. And now when you have an artist like Kendrick Lamar, who comes into the game in the late 2000s and currently is still here, more relevant than ever, with 4 classics under his discography: Good Kid, Mad City, To Pimp a Butterfly, Damn, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, and within another year, GNX, 5 potential classic albums. If you want to count Section 80, which is also a classic, it's what got him signed with Dr. Dre. The fact that Kendrick and Pac get compared to one another, even if Snoop doesn't say it publicly, he lies in our face all the time. Unless you feel some way that this 5'7" rapper that Drizzle Cake calls a midget and disrespects Pac in that same record that you promoted, Tailor Made. Because don't forget, Drizzle Cake says, "Kendrick, we need ya, West Coast savior," mocking Kendrick Lamar as the West Coast savior, which in all honesty, Snoop Dogg gave him that title when he gave him the throne as the King of the West back in 2011. What's the problem, Snoop?
Bitch, are you happy for me? Not on my face, but are you happy for me?
Why can't you side with Kendrick Lamar? My final thoughts. Snoop Dogg has overshadowed his own hip-hop legacy by not being a better representative to other West Coast rappers who come up in the same region and eventually surpass Snoop when it comes to cooking music and not cooking meals with Martha Stewart. Snoop Dogg does have a catalog that goes strong and far beyond with Doggy Style and the Doggfather. The No Limit era is iconic. No Limit Top Dog, my favorite album. But Snoop Dogg has never showcased his own music catalog because he's never respected his own music catalog enough, as he's focusing on TV shows, commentating for sports events. And as time has gone on, Snoop Dogg has also not represented Tupac's legacy in the best way, where he was one of his close friends before his untimely passing. There may have been issues with Snoop and Pac. So again, with that issue alone, and also having the potential issues with not siding with Kendrick Lamar in the battle between Drizzle Cake and Kendrick, even though Snoop Dogg is a West Coast legend and he always will be, his legacy is really not up there with a Ice Cube, with a Tupac, who is not even from the West Coast, but claims it very well because the Bay and LA got major love for Pac, unlike New York did.
And Biggie wouldn't have fucking died if that nigga hadn't lied. He lied. Y'all niggas worship him. Nobody wants to tell the truth. First,
Kendrick Lamar really puts dedication into his music. Just released a surprise album with GNX, including a bunch of local LA artists. Clearly, Kendrick Lamar gets it. He is becoming the OG, the West Coast legend, the mentor for younger West Coast artists who are coming up in hip hop, while Snoop Dogg has let that title go over 10 years ago. And just like Kendrick Lamar said on Whacked Out Murals,
couldn't believe it. It was only right for me to let it go.
Because even though he feels a way about Snoop Dogg acting sideways, Kendrick knows that there's no point in arguing with another West Coast legend, even if he knows he can walk all over his legacy like it's a game of hopscotch. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what your thoughts are about Snoop Dogg and his potential tension with Kendrick Lamar. Also, what's your favorite Snoop Dogg album? Let me know. Go be amazing and have an amazing day.